Before there was Jade collection, before there were branches, before there were bright lights and neatly folded clothes and people saying, wow, what a journey, there was Banice Mburu looking at one life and quietly deciding that it was too small. She was teaching, yes, but she was not comfortable with just teaching and wanted more for herself. So while the classroom gave her structure, fashion gave her motion. During school holidays, she traveled to Johannesburg with her own savings, bought clothes, and hawked them because there was no permanent shop yet. That is how this story begins. Then came the small exhibition table in Nakuru. You know, a few items, tight space, nothing glamorous. But that little table mattered because it turned a side hustle into something customers could actually find. And once people find you, business starts behaving differently. The table grew into something bigger, Millennium. Banice opened the exhibition, kept half of the space for her own products, and leased the other half to other exhibitors. Now this is how you know that this was already more than somebody trying to sell pretty things. She was learning trade, yes, but also learning control. Stock on one side, rent on the other. This is a very tidy business instinct actually. From there, she moved into Nairobi and got a shop at Embassy House, which then led to a second one. So by this point, the business was no longer just moving in bags and borrowed confidence. It had a floor, then another floor, and a clearer sense of itself. The products were tied to sourcing routes through South Africa and Dubai, and later the Far East and Turkey, which means that this was selection, rotation, instinct, and the growing ability to read what people wanted before they fully said it. Now, a major client ordered a 40-foot container of assorted supplies from her. Banice committed to the order. The goods were already in transit to Mombasa, and then the client quietly started importing its own goods and no longer wanted to depend on her. She was left exposed. This was the kind of blow that teaches a business person a lesson quickly and without any interest in their feelings. She had no warehouse or shop of her own at that point, and she had been relying heavily on that one major customer. You know, delivering consignment directly to the client's warehouse. So when that arrangement collapsed, it exposed the weakness in the whole model. It did not just hurt the revenue. And that is what pushed Banice towards retail in a more direct way. If building your business around one big customer can leave you stranded that badly, then maybe the smarter move is to stop standing behind someone else's counter and build your own. That is the real beginning of Jade collection. A betrayal in business, or at the very least, a brutal lesson in independence that forced Banice Mburu to rethink the model completely. So she went looking for a space in Nairobi's CBD. She found a place on Tomboya Street opposite the fire station. When that first proper Jade collection store opened, it had around 25 employees. That shows that the ambition was already bigger than a small boutique. The business was moving toward the family fashion identity it later became known for. Ladies, gents, boys, girls, baby wear, accessories, the whole house sorted. You see, Banice was not building a tiny fashion ego project. She was building utility with style. You know, the kind of a place that says, yes, look good, but also bring the children. Jade collection sat in that sweet spot between aspiration and practicality. Just a local fashion business that understood people wanted range, style, and affordability in the same room. This was not a luxury theater or a bargain bin confusion. As the business grew, so did the footprint. Jade expanded into Thika, Eldoret, Kisumu, and multiple Nairobi locations. Later, public records placed the chain at 8 outlets including Tomboya, Haile Selassie, Kenyatta Avenue, Mombasa Road, Westlands, Thika, Eldoret, and Kisumu. And if Tomboya wasn't the proving ground, Haile Selassie was the flex. That branch at the junction of Tomboya Street and Haile Selassie Avenue, it covered 9,715 square feet of 3 floors and reportedly cost about 40 million shillings in renovation and stocking. The branch was laid out with purpose, very clean and very organized. By then, Jade was not simply selling clothes, it was organizing them like a serious department-style retailer. By its peak, the company had hundreds of employees, which means Banice Mburu was no longer just the woman who wanted more than teaching. She was now at the center of a chain with payroll, branch coordination, stocking problems, rent pressure, and all the headaches people politely forget when they call somebody a success story. There's also the family capital layer in the story, and it matters. Pulse describes the business as the brainchild of Banice Mburu, while her father, Samuel Mburu, is described as the financial muscle behind the stores. Now let's not get it twisted, it does not erase her role, it just clarifies it. Banice is presented as the entrepreneurial force and public operator, while family money appears to have played a serious role in getting the business to scale. Which, to be honest, is how many real businesses work. Vision in one pair of hands, capital in another, and the public pretending that only one side counts because it sounds better in a magazine profile. Still, scale has a cost. The public record does not give neat annual revenues or tidy profit figures, but it gives enough to see the pressure. Imported stock, big branches, expensive fit-outs, staff, and expansion funded through retained profits and bank loans. So even at its peak, this was not light work, it was heavy business. Then the market turned. The pandemic hit retail, customer priorities shifted toward food and essentials. And Jade began restructuring. The company was closing non-performing branches and moving into smaller, more affordable spaces because rent had become too high. That's such a brutal sentence because, it just translates the entire expansion dream into one ugly word: rent. The same big spaces that once looked like confidence now looked like bills. And bills are much less inspirational when sales are limping. One wing of the Kisumu branch at Mega Plaza was closed. Haile Selassie was also targeted in the restructuring, and later reporting said that both Haile Selassie and Westlands shut down by the end of 2020. So this was survival in public, not a graceful little adjustment. And then there were the protests and the looting. Retail in Kenya is about exposure, visible shop, visible stock, visible risk. When unrest spills into business districts, a store is not a brand story anymore. It is glass, it is stock, it is shelves, it is fittings, and it's the speed at which all of that can disappear. So this is a very encouraging story, especially for me. I liked it when I was reading it. Banice Mburu wanted more than the life she had. She started small, first with Movement, then with a table in Nakuru, then with Millennium, then Embassy House. She built supply relationships, got hit by the collapse of a major customer arrangement built around a 40-foot container, and turned that shock into the retail pivot that gave birth to Jade Collection. And Banice Mburu is an example to all of us, This is the brain behind the brand. The woman who moved from teaching into trade, from trade into exhibitions, from exhibitions into supply, and from one very bad container lesson into the one thing that finally became Jade Collection. Bad fuel can destroy an engine, and without an E-Teams receipt, good luck proving where you fueled. One Touch Interactive helps petrol stations automate everything, from the E-Teams receipts, to the pump monitoring, to real-time reports, to full KRA compliance. And for the drivers, always ask for your E-Teams receipt before you leave the station. One Touch Interactive, because trust at the pump is everything.